So this is my recap four, which basically summarizes a little bit of what I've learned from writing my speeches, what I've learned from grading outlines in the peer review, as well as the having the impromptu speech and what experience I've had from that. Starting from the bat, writing off my speech. What I've learned a lot through writing my informative speech and just the rest of the speeches in the entire class was it's more just about having a interaction with you and the guests and not just talking about information, if that makes sense. So what I've had my experience in high school where anytime I would deliver a speech, I pretty much just have all this information, and then I would just have to read it off a paper basically and just say what I have to say, and then I sit down. But what I've learned is that it's a lot more than that. You have to be interactive. You have to ask the audience questions relating to what you have to say. You have to have personal testimony of what you're relating to in your story. You have to have quotes from certain people that relate to what you're writing. You have to have all these things. You have to have sources that are credible. You have to have a lot of these things. And writing my paper, I found was very difficult because I was so used to just writing all about just the information and not actually making it a personal experience for the audience. So that's what I learned about writing in my audience. What I also learned was in their peer review is having to grade is I never had an experience to actually grade another person's paper. But what I've learned was that there's a lot of things that I saw in those papers that needed to have improvements. I saw that people needed to have less filler, people needed to sound more personal, people or the right excuse me, the writer of the story needed to have more sources, needed to just have more information, all these things. And what I learned is that learning from all these different writers in my peer review, I think I had three or four people there. And what I learned was everyone had their own problems. Nobody had the same problem. One guy had way too many sources. So he was having all this information. I was just confused because he had just throwing me information. It was way too much. It was information overload. While one person just didn't have enough information. While one person just needed to sound more relatable when he was writing his speech. It sounded like too much, too much information. It wasn't. There was no stories. There was no questions to the audience. So I saw these things from these different people. Sorry, writers, and then they saw stuff that I had as well, and they all had different things they critiqued for me. They also one of them said that I needed more sources. One of them said that I needed to have some more information. So what I learned is that everyone has their own issues, and I learned from everyone's. I learned is basically I learned from everyone's mistakes that they've made, and I learned not to make the same mistakes in my paper, if that makes sense. And I loved that peer review because I get to learn in a whole new different way of seeing everyone else's issues and implementing those issues into fixing my paper, which was really cool. To summarize everything with the impromptu speech, being put on the spot was very challenging for me. For me, I like to think about things. I like to process it. I like to have a couple of minutes, maybe a couple hours, just to process it before I could speak. But being put on the spot, we had less than like 5 or 10 minutes to actually figure out something. Being put on the spot, I wasn't used to that at all. So what I learned was I had to use my creativity in a short amount of time to basically use it to my advantage. Having something like that sort of teaches you in life where you're put in situations where you have to get something done really fast. Say it's for a job interview, so if the interviewer is asking you a direct question, um, it's good to have that mind process to think really quick and respond to that question. And I really felt that that was a great exercise because it made me to think a little bit more and let me use my creativity a little bit better. So I love that learning experience to just um, go off on a couple minutes to just think of something really good and try to have that same idea with somebody else. I really like that. I learned from learning right off the bat. So that's basically everything I've learned from writing my speech, the peer review, and to the impromptu speech. I had a really great experience learning all these things, and it was just a really great experience to be a part of this class.